What is going on, everybody? We're back again. Another episode of Haul Across the Country. This time, our first episode is from the Keystone State. We are finally in Pennsylvania. Um, the last week or so has been very nice. It's been probably one of the most, uh, I guess you could say, helpful uh, stretches that we've had on this walk. But you know, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. So last time left you guys, we were in Morgantown, West Virginia. I had just rested about 4 or 5 days, letting the back slash like SI joint issue that had flared up kind of work itself out a little bit, and it seemed to work. I mean, knock on wood, it's felt pretty good since, and we have done some considerable amounts of climbing. Um, but yeah, so early last Tuesday morning, got up, went down to Sheets in Star City, and was chilling out. Had my usual breakfast of a couple of Sheets donuts because there are quite a few Sheets around here, and they've got some solid donuts. And for breakfast food, I mean, obviously, look at me. I'm never turning down a donut, but a couple donuts and the usual zero sugar monsters. Uh, Ultra Peachy Keen is my favorite. But yeah, I spent that very first day, we walked 23 miles. First nine or so, I was on the Mon River Trail, the Monongahela River Trail that leaves Morgantown and drops you off in Point Marion, Pennsylvania. And, had some really cool views, along the river. Cool little fox. Um, Power plant. It's probably the closest I've ever been to a coal producing power plant. Um, and one thing that kind of made me sad along the trail was at one point on the trail you cross over from West Virginia to Pennsylvania, and um, obviously if you're on the road you get the whole "Welcome to Pennsylvania" sign, and I was a little disheartened that I didn't get that on the trail. So like I had to make do with this beautiful shot here as you see the Fayette County sign in the background. Uh, but yeah, got into Point Marion, a real tiny town right there on the river. One of the first towns that George Washington came to when he was uh, scouting for the French and Indian War. And a little piece of history there. Um, Used to be a big, coal and glass uh, town, but as those industries have kind of waned, the town has seen the impacts. There's a nice little diner there. Had a stopped and had a chicken sandwich and some fries. Just something to give me some energy because I still had 14 miles to go. Left there and began the 14-mile tail end of the day towards Carmichael's, Pennsylvania. And that stretch was my first introduction to Pennsylvania hills. Now, obviously, we're still, you know, roughly in the Appalachian slash Allegheny slash Laurel Mountain Highlands. They all kind of run together around here. But it was kind of weird because West Virginia, most of the hills didn't really seem to have like a real bad grade. I mean, you might have, yeah, I had some long climbs like and some good elevation gain, but most of them seemed fairly gradual. Um, Pennsylvania was like, here's what you guys get. Um, so going into Carmichael's, there were in this last 14-mile stretch. Excuse me, I seem to have nudged the tripod. That last 14-mile stretch, thankfully in Pennsylvania, they have significantly more shoulders on the roads. Um, West Virginia, y'all got to work on that. That was some sketchy walking. Uh, but I start going, and I had three separate climbs that day that were like 200 feet of elevation gain within a mile or less. And yeah, I had stopped and had lunch. Obviously, breakfast was not a calorie dense breakfast. That's all. That's my own fault. But you know what? Am I going to change? At this point, probably not. Um, but yeah, so yeah, I was feeling it. A lot of these climbs were rough, and about I don't know 4 miles left, 4.5, I think. There was another Sheets I came up to, and it was right before like the final climb, which was the worst climb of the day. Um, so I stopped in at Sheets, grabbed a couple ginger ales because it was getting later in the day, and I didn't want caffeine to risk keeping me awake. So I grabbed a couple ginger ales and some caramels or something. I just wanted to get like a quick boost of like glucose, sugar, energy. And I'm a fat guy, so sugar is always going to be the primary way I go. Excuse me. So yeah, I down one of my ginger ales and eat a pack of caramels, and I get back on the road. And yeah, I think this climb was like 200 to 250. I remember I remember it very clearly that it was a rough climb. And finally, after multiple breaks, I'm talking like walk 50 to 100 feet, not 50. It's probably mostly like 100 was about like the shortest. I'd walk 100 feet, stop, take a breather, pop into somebody's driveway so I'm less in the road, and just kind of just trudging up there, kept going, one step after another. And it was the first time, as opposed to West Virginia, where I kind of got teased with every time you'd get to the top of a hill, you'd expect to see a view, and there was nothing. But I got to the top, and there was kind of this nice little view right by a church here. And so, I had to put the cart down and get a cool little background photo of the setting sun, and what you don't see there is me in the back crying like a baby because all those climbs took a lot out of me. But I dropped down into Carmichael. Um, it was a nice. I mean, most of the walk into Carmichael was downhill, and it was actually downhill to significant grade itself for I don't know a half mile to a mile or so. And a lot of people will be like, "Well, it's downhill. It's got to be great." It's like downhill is not necessarily as good or that much better than going uphill. I'm expending less energy on pushing, but now I have to hold the cart the whole way down. So I'm stopping. I'm utilizing completely different muscle groups, but you know it's not significantly easier one way or the other. I get tired less going downhill, but again, that's because I've got huge quads and stuff, so it's a lot easier to stop the cart from going down than it is to use my legs to propel it upwards. Um, but I get down into Carmichael's, and we had reached out to the fire department, and they were more than willing to accommodate, except the week I was down there, Carmichael's was having their annual like coal festival. They celebrate the heritage of the area. As far as the coal industry and stuff like that. And I did not realize how big it was because Carmichael's slash Cumberland Township, which are like, kind of like the same, right next to each other, kind of that same area. Like, it didn't really seem like an overly populated place, but man, I got down there. And keep in mind, this is, I got into town about 6:30 in the evening, and that's like right when this thing kicks off. Like, it's pretty much like an afternoon and evening festival for 4 or 5 days out of the week. And uh, yeah, the fire department was like, "We would love to have you, but there's going to be food trucks and parking right in the right where we would let you put your tent down." And at first, admittedly, at first I was like, "Yeah, come on." And then I like came down to Main Street, turned or George Street, and I turned left, and I looked, and I was like, "Holy crap!" Got down there, and like people were parking across the street, like the whole school was full of parking was full up of people and stuff. Like it was a big deal. Um, So my buddy Adam, who's our fire department hookup so far, he reached out to Cross Point Assembly of God, really nice church in on the west end of Carmichael's, and I met Sammy and Tyler, uh, husband and wife. They met me out there and let me into the church. Church had a shower and a couch up top on the second floor that looked like it was kind of in a music room or a storage room. I mean, they had musical gear up there, but I think they were just kind of they were storing the musical gear for services and whatnot in this room. Had two couches, had a TV. They had a lot of TVs. It was just a really nice church. They had like a coffee shop in it. They sold like T-shirts and hoodies. It was just and like a lot of tables where people could sit down and have like fellowship with each other. Before or after a service. It just a and upstairs had all the kids stuff. It was just a really good church. And I was talking to them, and congratulations to them. They're currently building a bigger church out in Waynesburg because they've outgrown this one. She said, but including kids, they've got a congregation of around 400 people. And I was like, whoa, that's fairly large sized congregation. She's like, yeah, so we got to have we got to have two services every week. Um, Good problem to have. But we finished talking. They volunteered to go down to Subway up the road, and they bought me some dinner, which was much needed after 23 miles. Um, so ate the dinner. I got my shower. Went up onto the couch, and there was no AC up there. Had a little fan running. Uh, Probably didn't even need the fan. Made me a little chilly, but um, fairly good night's rest. Next morning, we wake up, and man, was it chilly. I wasn't prepared for it. Uh, I opened the door to go out, and it was like this blast of air. I think it was like 44 degrees tops. And really, I don't mind that. I'm a big dude, so once I get moving, which is like 3.5 minutes, I'll probably start sweating. But yeah, I opened the door and was like, "Holy crap!" And I was like, "I don't have a hoodie at this point because when I had gone home to be with Dad before he passed away, like I took my hoodie out of the tub, out of the cart. I was like, I'm not going to need it. It's not going to get chilly for a while. And even then, when I was out west, I would only use the hoodie for a few hours, till it gets to noon. Even earlier, once my body heat gets me warmed up, the hoodie comes off. So it wasn't like a vital thing. I could have gone to a Goodwill store and gotten a cheap one, or anywhere. Uh, but I walked down the street to the Circle K to get the usual breakfast. Although this Circle K did not have donuts, so I had to settle for some Little Debbie like honey bun type things. Got my monsters though. Got to have that caffeine. It's usually about the only caffeine I take into the day is right there in the morning. Kind of give me that boost. Um, and I was messaging Sammy, and I said, "Hey," I told her, "Thank you guys again for all of your hospitality." Uh, I was like, man, but I told her, I was like, man, I really wish that I had brought my hoodie because it's a little bit chilly, at least for to start with. And, she was like, oh, we were glad to help out. And I hadn't even left. I hadn't even walked out of Circle K when a woman comes up and introduces herself as being from the church and hands me a 3X hoodie from the church. And I had seen the hoodie like in the merchandise shop at the church when I woke up. And it said like there was a sign on it that said, last 3X. And I was like, because it was so chilly, I was like, well, maybe I just grab this and then tell Sammy like, hey, I'll shoot you guys. Like, tell me where I need to send this money. I'll pay for it. But I didn't. I was like, I'm not gonna take from a church. Like, even if I want to pay for it, like, I'm not gonna do that. Like, I've got a few principles in this life. So I just left it. Went to the gas station, and comes back, and they gave me the hoodie, and I sent her a message, and I was like, you guys didn't have to do that. I was like, 5-10 minutes up the road, I'd probably be rolling in sweat, and they just wanted to bless the walk, however they could. I'm apologizing for the yawning. I just woke up. I meant to record last night, but my body was still kind of fried, you'll all will find out why here in a second. Um, but had my energy drinks consumed and decided to start heading forth. Uh, this day, the goal was West Brownsville Fire Department. On the first walk, Todd King and his wife Regina, I met with them. They put me up on the first walk, let me sleep inside the station. On the first walk, it was good because it was raining that day. When I finally got into West Brownsville on that day in the walk, I could still remember everything. Um, I came into town, which has like a big hill that you dip down into. Spoiler alert. But as I was coming into town, I stopped at I was actually going to walk by because I was so tired. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to go to the fire station. But I walked past this restaurant called Pickers Pub and Grub, and it was kind of like, like the American Pickers. So it had uh, like antique type stuff like all over the restaurant. Cool little place. But a gentleman runs out. His name's John Newcomer, and he grabs me. He's like, "Hey," he's like, "Me and my wife saw you walking earlier, and kind of wanted to know what it was for." And I was telling him, and he's like, "Come inside. We're gonna buy you dinner." And I'm like, "Look at me. I'm not turning down a meal." Um, but we talk, and in Pickers, all of the hostesses hear why I'm there, hear what I'm doing. They in turn tell the people they're serving for like a 45-minute period while I'm eating dinner. I was like a part-time celebrity. Um, but yeah, I left Pickers. I went across the bridge to the fire station, and was getting ready to set the tent up. And they were like, "Well, are you sure you want? Do you mind sleeping on a couch? Because we have a couch inside." And I was like, "It's dry inside." Yes. So I was like, "Yeah, I'd love to sleep inside. I'm never going to turn that down." And so yeah, they let me sleep inside. Stay dry for got to put the cart inside and everything. Stroller at that point, that was a jogging stroller. But yeah, so this day would have been it was set for a 17-mile day from Carmichael's to uh, West Brownsville, and the first part of the day wasn't too hateful. The climbs were okay, nothing major. One of the servers from the original trip from Pickers, Kelly, had followed the first walk, and in this one, and she said, well, if you're going to Browns, and this was a while back, she's like, well, if you're ever going back to Brownsville, she's like, I moved and I work at Vesta 88. Uh, it's like a coal miner tribute bar. Again, paying homage to the industry that built up the area. And I was like, she's like, if you're there, she's like, I'll make sure you're taken care of. And this was a while, like I said, this was a few weeks ago, and I said, yes, it's before Dad passed, so I thought I would have been there a lot sooner. And but I connected with her, and she's like, "Hey," she's like, "just go in. They're gonna take care of you for lunch." So I was like, "Cool." On the way to Brownsville, I've got a place to stop and get lunch, and man, uh, I stopped into this place, and they had like I'm obviously a big dude. I'm not super picky on my meals, but like you come up on the place, and it's got some really cool shots here, like you get the murals in the windows, and you got the coal miner photos. And then I walked in, and like right inside the front door there's a coal miner like taking a rest. But I go in, and the servers, obviously they could see the shirt. They kind of know what to expect, like large neon man will enter the restaurant. um but I sit down, and the server, she's like, "Hey," she's like, "whatever you want, it's on the house." uh so I look through the menu, and I go for the seafood pasta, which has like shrimp, scallops, and mussels. And I've never had mussels in my life. I mean, not even when I was in college wrestling, I still didn't have mussels. Ha ha, that was a pun. But I was like, you know what? I'll try the seafood pasta. I was like, yeah, the sauce will be not great for like health purposes, but carbs from the pasta will be nice for energy to finish the last 7 miles or so. And uh, obviously there's some protein with the shrimp, scallops, and mussels or whatnot. And I was like, and I've never tried mussels. Man, this dish came out, and oh god, like the sauce was so good. Like I honestly can't even tell you if I like mussels, because the sauce was I don't want to say overpowering, so that's like a negative connotation, but it was just the sauce was so good you couldn't really taste the mussels. But I didn't get like an off-putting texture from eating the mussels. So I guess we're 50-50 on mussels. It's kind of like coleslaw. Like I'll eat it, but it's not going to be like I'm never going to outright order it yet. Until I try it again and work my way through that. Um, I talked to a few people who had seen the cart outside and had obviously surmised that uh, it was me that was pushing it. I don't know if it was because the logo on my shirt matches the cart, or I was the only like solo person in there, so they were like, that must be that guy's cart." But I talked to a few people about what we were doing, and a few of them are since have become followers of the walk. So which thank you guys. Uh, but I finished my meal. Um, took a little. I took about an extra 45 minutes to an hour to let it settle because I knew that the end of the day had one climb that was going to be pretty rough. And so I left. I let the food settle, get back on the road. I was like, it's only 7 more miles. Even with the climbs, might take me 3.5 hours. Just kind of like budgeting time for resting on the climb. And they were also doing road construction too, uh, which was kind of good because traffic would stop. Like you would have traffic that would go this way, and then eventually, a few minutes later, then you'd get the influx of traffic this way. But for the most part, it was kind of like one-way traffic, so I was a little bit less stressed. But as I'm pulling up on the hill, and the hill was uh, within the last 5 or 6 miles of West Brownsville, this was like a 45 degree, at least at the beginning. So probably for the first like third of a mile or so was straight like 45 degree, and I am right at the beginning of this hill with the cart, and I see a truck coming down at me with red and white lights flashing, and I was like, "But that's strange. That's not a construction vehicle." Turned out it was Todd, the chief at West Brownsville. He brought a guy down. They had apparently been sending me messages, but right there along the river, uh, I didn't have any signal, so I didn't get any of the messages. But they loaded the cart up, so I could just walk for the last 5 miles, which was, whew, the beginning of that hill would have absolutely cooked my legs. I had to stop a few times, even without the cart. Um, yeah, finished the last 5 mile or so walk into West Brownsville. Got acquainted with everybody. I met Dean Lacey, the mayor of West Brownsville, who's also a firefighter, who also helps run a food pantry. Which props to you, man. We talked about how he goes to various different cities around and drops and gives out boxes of food to people in need. And yeah, he wears a lot of hats in that town. But man, that's helping the people. That's what we're about. At least I hope I'm helping people. God, am I at least entertaining? But they were having wing night there at the social social club for firefighters, like bar slash social club. It was kind of I'd never seen one before, like as part of a fire station complex. It was a cool little thing. Um, but I'd already made plans to meet with John, the gentleman from the first walk, at Pickers for dinner. Uh, so I decided to kind of try to correct what I had been doing for dinner, because up until recently, what I would do at the end of the day, especially if I'm in a room or something, or even if I end up in an area where there's like a lot of restaurants around me, is I get water and I do get a soda at the end of the day, whether it's Sprite or root beer. I try to get something that doesn't have caffeine in it. Again, I don't want to be awake, but I'm trying to pour calories in because I still haven't found the stuff that I can tolerate to eat enough that's like pantry stable that I can keep on the cart. Um, I used to do peanut butter and bagels uh, with honey. That was a big thing for us in college, like after weigh-ins and whatnot, before you get ready to wrestle. You have some of that because of all the glucose, the natural, sugar from the honey, the carbs and stuff. It's a good energy. Uh, a good quick energy thing after you've cut down your weight and everything for who knows how long, a week or two. Um, but when I was in Uniontown later on, like I was just having breakfast and I'm trying to eat them and I'm just like it's like forcing food down my throat. And I know you look at me and you're like, there's obviously not a lot of forcing when it comes to food down that guy's throat. Um, Truth be told, I don't eat nearly as much as you would think I do, or as much as some of the people that want to hate on me think I do. It's just that, especially when I was at home, a lot of the stuff that I would choose to eat was not necessarily the healthiest stuff. My preferred flavoring was deep fried. But what I would do is I would get to wherever I'm going for the evening, and I would get a water or like a gallon of water, and I would also get like some sodas, like I said, and I would drink so much water and soda that I would never eat all of my meal that I bought. So I said, you know what? When I go over to Pickers, I'm just going to eat something light and just hang out with John and talk with him and kind of catch up on the last couple years and you know, like I said, eat very little because I want to make sure I eat everything, and then I can go back to the social hall with the firefighters and have a few wings at the end of the night. So I got over to Pickers. I got to meet with the owner of Pickers. She was not there on the first walk. She wasn't working that day, so she didn't get a chance to meet me or take any pictures or anything. So she came over. We grabbed a picture. John and I had, I had like loaded nachos and then a half loaf of their garlic bread. I still didn't even eat all the garlic bread. And I'm like, okay, Joe didn't eat all the bread. No, for once I didn't. I took it back with me. Um, Same thing though. I got a water and like a Sprite. Uh, Again, try to make up calories. It's a combination of trying to eat enough calories to get me going for the next day, and the next day was rough. But it's a balancing act between trying to replenish the stuff you didn't eat throughout the day to give your body a chance to recover at night, and powering your body for the following morning for whatever you got going on. For me, it just turned out to be really really crappy climb. Yeah, I finished my food. John and we had made plans to camp in Confluence, Pennsylvania, which would have been Saturday night, uh, which, as you'll find out coming up, does not necessarily happen. Uh, and so we said our goodbyes. Like I grabbed my food, walked back across the bridge to the fire station, and went to the social hall. Talked to everybody. I ordered like I ordered 6 wings because I didn't realize they were full wings. I thought so Uh, I really should have just ordered 3 wings. It would have been 3 drums, 3 flats. Uh, but I just got 6 wings. I was like, yeah, let me get a water and a couple ginger ales. Uh, talked more with people that were there, people that wanted to know what I was doing. A few people that I was talking to had seen me walking throughout the day, or had seen it shared on Facebook. And yeah, I got all done with that. Went next door to the firehouse itself because they have just built a new station, and they have an upstairs that's not fully finished yet, but that's kind of like their lounge area. There's a couch and some chairs, and they had a washing machine downstairs. Or like if you want to do any laundry, I was all good at that point. And then they had a shower, which again, like I've on this walk, I've been very lucky about getting showers for the most part. The first walk I would go to. There were several times where I would go 3 days or more without a shower. Just be living off the baby wipes and dude wipes. Sink showering at gas stations in the morning. When I wake up, kind of clean up and then switch clothes for the next day. Uh, but yeah, I've been very fortunate so far. Um, Went to bed, had a fairly decent night's sleep. The couch remembered me. We were old acquaintances. Uh, and I got up to head to Uniontown, Pennsylvania the next day. It was only a 14-mile walk. This stretch started off, it went 23, 17, 14, and then just a shade under 10 miles for this 4-day span. So I was like, man, 14 miles would be good. And I started walking across the Monongahela River and caught a nice little shot of like the fog, trying to lift as I was leaving Brownsville. And so this walk leaving Brownsville, I know how all the cities, in the 17 and 1800s were or earlier were founded. They were by the rivers because that's where you could, you know, do commerce easier and you could ship things and receive things and travel. But this walk out of West Brownsville was murder. Um, you cross the bridge, you get into Brownsville proper, and some of the sidewalks are beat up. And granted, I mean they're older, trees are growing up. It is what it is. I mean that's just nature, right? Um, but like legitimately, it was. I believe when I looked it up, it was a 400 and overall, it was like 450 feet of elevation gain over like 2.2 miles. There was not a stretch really until probably the 2 mile mark of this walk out of West Brownsville and Brownsville that was not at like 30-degree incline, 30 to 45. It was just a straight uphill go the entire time. It took like 2.5 hours to go 2 miles. Um, I get to the top, and I hadn't had breakfast this day, so I found a Sheets, and you know what that means? It's donut and monster time. I was like, man, maybe the monsters will give me some energy to kind of push through the next 12 miles to get into Uniontown. And I'm walking in, and a gentleman comes up to me, and he was like, hey, he's like, I passed you coming up on the hill out of Brownsville. He's like, would you mind if I grab, I'll buy you breakfast, whatever you want in here. And I was like, sure, yeah, Uh, I went in and got my usual. I got two donuts and two monsters. I usually try to get three donuts, but I was never eating it, so we're gonna save money. I'm only gonna get the two. And we get out, and when I saw this dude, like he had a Cal University in Pennsylvania shirt on, and I thought he was a student, fairly young looking guy. But he introduces himself, and his name's Chuck. He was a firefighter at Brownsville, not West Brownsville. I guess he's the assistant chief, which he may have told me, and I've just got terrible recollection, or he just said he was a firefighter, and somebody else told me he was the assistant chief. But we sat around and we talked for probably half hour, 45 minutes about mental health again among first responders. I do spend a considerable amount of time with first responders. So we do have a lot of these uh, occupational centric discussions about their mental health. And uh, he had worked with a guy. I can't remember if he said this guy was a college friend of his or just a colleague that had done this study. And it was an extensive study about PTSD among first responders. And he said that in this study, it showed that 2 years of public service as a first responder, whether it's police, fire, EMS, any of that, in 2 years of public service, the brain sees the equivalent amount of PTSD that a Vietnam veteran experienced. And that was outrageous to me. Not outrageous in the sense that I didn't believe him, but outrageous in the sense that, you know, this study, when he was describing it to me, he's like, this was a study that included data from many other studies. Like, this was a very comprehensive study. I wished he and I had been having this conversation at a computer and I could have, looked it up just to see, try to see some of the more of the results from it. But like, you know, everybody knows what Vietnam was like. I think like the average lifespan for a lot of those guys when they were for green troops that were dropped into a lot of those areas was like 15 minutes, 20 minutes. Like it was a awful place, and you saw some awful stuff. And to think that 2 years of working with the public can create that same level of PTSD is just mind blowing. But Chuck and I, we finish up talking because I know he's got to go, and he's like, "Yeah, I know you got to go," and he gives me his card, and he's in fire truck sales, and he's like, whatever connections I've got as you go, he's like, I'll give you a hand when I can, and we went our separate ways, and this remaining stretch from uh, Brownsville to Uniontown, like it showed climbs, and again, I had walked this part. I didn't walk this part for a good portion of it because it wasn't 40. I walked Old 40 to get out of Brownsville. When I came into town 2 years ago, I took actual 40. So I had bypassed. Um, Looking back on it, I probably should have taken like new 40. It would have just been like a more gradual climb than what this was, but this was a more direct route. Saved me a couple of miles, I guess. And if I had gone regular 40, I never would have met Chuck. Chuck's a good guy. It's always nice to meet cool people on this walk. So, I get going and, it's again, we're down or up, the hills aren't rolling these aren't rolling hills, especially when you're pushing the cart. Um, I probably get a mile and a half up the road, and there's a pizza place, Mike and Sons, and I'm walking by, and I had my music going. I was actually grooving to Elvira, sung by Home Free, and I hear somebody kind of like, it because it was behind me, like, hey, hey, and I kind of stop and turn, and there's a woman up there that's like waving me, wait, and I'm looking around because there was another lady in front of me that was getting out of her car, so I didn't know if she was looking at the lady, looking at me, and I was like, is she talking to me? She was like, yeah, come here. So I was like, okay, turn around, go back up a little bit into the parking lot, and her name was Edie, and she at first she said she had seen me in the newspaper, and I was like, I haven't done any newspaper interviews for a while. She's like, well, maybe it was on Facebook, because there were a ton of people who had begun sharing the posts and sharing the walk, and I was having people stop and be like, hey, I see you on Facebook, and I'm like, thanks. Do you think you could just push me up this hill with your car? I'll just I'll just like ride on the front bumper or something. Um, but she brings me in, invites to buy me or offers to buy me lunch, and I wanted to, she's having lunch with her friend Anna, and so we got to talking about the walk and everything. And they both work for churches. That they said they were going to try to get together and do a fundraiser on their own to try to help us give us some money, which was nice of them. I just had something fairly light, like a Philly cheesesteak or something. Uh, I had 11 miles to go, 10 or 11 miles to go still, and just something to get some quick energy. I didn't want a whole lot of grease sitting in my stomach. Um, but yeah, I start marching the hills into Uniontown, and it's just like up a steep grade, down a steep grade, up a steep, and these were like 100 foot climbs, just over and over. And this part, I had walked the first time, because right around the time you get to Mike and Sons is where new 40 broke, or like the proper 40, the highway broke off. And if you kept going straight, you're on old 40. And so this part, like, I'd walked it 2 years ago, and I just didn't remember it being so terrible. But up and down, and I finally get into Uniontown, and a gentleman passes me in his truck. His name's Howard, and when I was walking my first time through on this little stretch, because this was like, I made this detour so I could revisit with some of the people that I met on my first walk, the West Brownsville people, Derek, who is the executive chef at Braddock's, few miles further up in Farmington. I was like, I don't have a whole lot of chances on this walk to like reconnect with people that I met the first time. So when I get a chance, if it's a little bit out of the way, I'm going to do it. Um, but Howard, I had passed Howard on my first walk, like coming into Uniontown, and he was at his shop, and I gave him the guy nod, like, how's it going, and he had stumbled on the walk later on, the first walk after that, and realized, he's like, oh my god, that was that dude that I nodded at. But he passed me as I was coming into West Brownsville, or into Uniontown, excuse me, and he goes, hey, he's like, you want me to give you a ride to the fire station? He's like, because you're not going to have shoulder up here until you actually get into the city itself, till you get through Restaurant Row here. He's like, there's no shoulder. And I'm like, nah, it's like, can't do it. I'm not hurt and the weather's not bad. It's like, if they don't get over, it's like, I just get a free hospital stay. And he was like, all right, man. Um, yeah, went the remaining 2.5 miles or so. Uh, got into Uniontown, and uh, it was kind of cool. I realized that Uniontown was established on July 4th, 1776. Very clever name. It was also the home of George C. Marshall. There are quite a few like plaques and whatnot that commemorate uh, George Marshall for everything he did, winning World War II, and he actually won the Nobel Peace Prize. Something I didn't know. When I get to the fire station, meet with the assistant chief. They gave me a spot to camp for the night, allowed me to shower, which was chef's kiss. Uh, and there was a woman, Devin, who had reached out to the Facebook page and said, like, hey, if you want, you can meet us at Smitty's. It's steak night. And I was like, steak? And, I'm always down for conversation. As you guys can imagine, this walk can get fairly lonely. So I was like, yeah, it's like, if I get into town in time and I'm not completely exhausted, I'll meet you guys out there. Got into town. Um, talked with the firefighters for a few, and I was like, I had time, so I actually ordered an Uber because it was a 3.5 mile walk to get to Smitty's. It's like on the other end of town. Uber drops me off, and I sit down with Devin, Shay, and Carrie. They were all meeting there for dinner. There were a few other people, I guess, that were supposed to come but didn't. Um, and we're talking about the story and talking about the walk. And I did my usual where I was like, and I said this as a joke to the server. I was like, let me get a pitcher of water and a pitcher of whatever you have that doesn't have caffeine in it. And she was like, ginger ale. I'm like, ginger ale sounds good. So she literally brings me out a pitcher of water and a pitcher of ginger ale. And my fat butt just threw the straws in there. I was like, I'm not going to ask for a glass. Um, but we're talking, and like Devin is telling all the people that are there that she knows, regular folks, about what I'm doing. And a couple of guys come up and they shake my hand and they're like, man, that's awesome. These two gentlemen here, whose names I absolutely forgot, because again, you know, I'm pretty sure I do have ADHD. I have trouble remembering names. But these guys, after I had already ordered, were like, we're going to pay for your meal, which was great. I had ordered the T-bone steak. Was it T-bone? No, it wasn't a T-bone. A porterhouse. I don't remember. It was the smallest steak that they had on their steak night special. That was a 12 ounce. And I also ordered crab legs because I love crab legs. And then with the tip, it ended up being like, I don't know, $45. And they were like, here, they gave me 60, so the waitress got a 33% tip too, which is pretty standard if you're me. It takes a lot for me to not tip you a fairly good amount. Like, as long as my drink gets filled, I'm very easy to please. Like, you can literally bring me the wrong order, and I'm probably still going to eat it and still give you a good tip. But we sit there and we talk, and I finish eating, and we grab a group shot of me, and that's Carrie, Devin, and Shay. Um, and then Devin's like, "Hey, I'll run you back to the firehouse," and I'm like, "Cool." Get back to the firehouse, get everything ready to crash out, and I hit the hay. Next morning, I wanted to leave at 7 o'clock, but best laid plans. Uh, I woke up at 7, spent some time talking to the fire chief, and one of the firefighters there. We got to talking about mental health again. Obviously, especially among first responders, because these, especially EMS people, they see the death way more frequently than the firefighters do, and that's what this gentleman said. And he, and he was one of those guys. He's like, yeah, at first I didn't think it was legit as far as like mental health. And he goes, but now I've kind of seen the light, so to speak. So he's like, I talk to people, we talk to other firefighters. We talk about the struggles we're going through and things like that. And it helps them figure out a way to work through all the trauma that they go through in their profession. Um, but yeah, I ended up staying about 2 extra hours. I didn't think it was going to be that big a deal. I only had about a 10-mile walk to get to Braddock's restaurant and tavern, which is where I stopped my first time through. And I met Derek, their manager, who on that walk and this walk would both donate a meal and a room at their hotel up the road, the Stonehouse Tavern. So that was awesome. Um, but I had to climb this mountain. And what I didn't realize when I climbed this mountain the first time is I was going east to west the first time. And doing that, the eastern side of the mountain is about 1,000 feet higher than the western side of the mountain. So, like on the first trip, everybody had told me when I was having lunch and dinner that night on the first walk 2 years ago, like, man, you got to be careful. That mountain's going to be rough. And I'm like, yeah, okay. So get going, and it has signs like dangerous mountain ahead. Like, okay. I pushed my way to the top, and I got to the top and was kind of like, well, that was it. Now, this one was a bit different because instead of a 600-foot climb, I had 1,500 feet of elevation. The 1,500 feet of elevation was from the firehouse, so I think like from the base of the mountain itself, it might have been like 1,200, 1,300. Still a fair piece to climb in like 2.5 miles, 2.5, 3 miles. I mean, it's good elevation gain. There's not a level area on it. Again, it's like a consistent 45-degree climb the entire way. And so I get going up this thing. I get to the mountain and start climbing up. And I found this out later. Apparently, there was a 911 call about a man in an orange shirt going up the mountain and he appeared to be in distress. Yes, I was in distress. Uh, but apparently, the Hopwood Fire Department guys had kind of interrupted the call and were like, no, no, no. He's like, he's okay. He's doing a walk across the country. He's okay. And I'm like, I'm, I'm not okay, though. I'm miserable. This walk was rough going up this way. Like, it was a lot easier when all I had to do was go down and just hold my jogging stroller on the first walk. Um, I got about a third of the way up, and Howard, the gentleman I met a couple of days ago, whose shop was in Hopwood, Pennsylvania, just right before the mountain. I was like, man, I was like, because somebody had offered to take the cart up the hill over to Braddock's for me the night before, and I'm like, man, I'm gonna push up this hill. I'm gonna push up this hill. I sent Howard a message like, dude, I should have taken this guy up. I was like, I am struggling. He's like, I'll swing by. We'll load it up and I'll take it over to Braddock's for you. And I was like, okay. Yeah, I was like, you know what? Fine. I'd only gone. I'd probably only climbed up 200 to 300 feet of this mountain. And it's like 4-lane road. I mean, there was a decent shoulder at this point, but it was miserable climb. So he gets there, and I mean, like I had watched the same truck overheat 3 times. This guy pulling his farm equipment up the hill, but he overheated like 2 or 3 times in the time I saw trying to go up the hill. If that puts it in perspective, we get the cart loaded up. We couldn't get a hold of Derek, so I rode with Howard. We dumped the cart off, and then he brought me back to where he picked me up as he headed back to his shop. And finished the rest of the mountain with just my backpack, and it still took a good amount of time. Um, it's just no joke. And apparently, there are people that run up that thing like every day or like every Saturday, and I'm like, I can't. I don't even want to walk up this thing. But one foot in front of the other. You just keep going. Got to the top. Nice view again. Same view I remember from the first time. Um, but I was like, we gotta get going. So I finished the rest of the walk that day. Got to Braddock's, hooked up with Derek. He came by and dropped off all the packages. I knew where I was going that day, so I had a few things shipped to Braddock's that I could pick up along the way, like the new camping cot I got. Karen, one of the followers, had bought a new backup battery for me. I'd had a much bigger like battery pack that was like 10 pounds. It stopped working out of nowhere, so this was another backup uh, power source in case the solar panel went down or I didn't have a place to plug in some things over. You always have to have a little bit of backup for power. Um, and then my mom had sent 2 pair of shoes that my friend Chris had bought, a pair of Merrill boots and another pair of Ultras. So I'm giving them both a test run to see if Merrill can win me over as far as their durability and stability on the walk. Uh, yeah, but I finished dinner. I crashed at the Stonehouse that night. And then the next day, I had planned 18, 19 miles to get to Confluence so I could camp with John, the firefighter from a couple of nights prior. And I was just wiped out. I don't know what it was. It's like maybe it was climbing the mountain. Maybe I didn't get as good a sleep. Maybe I didn't hydrate enough overnight. I don't know what it was, but like I started going. I did meet with Joyce, the owner of the Cinder Shack, just a mile up the road from Braddock's, and she made a donation to haul across the country, and we talked about mental health, and I told her how I'm planning on visiting the Flight 93 Memorial, which will actually be today. And she goes, well, she's like, a lot of the firefighters in Somerset, where I'm currently at now, uh, that was one of the primary departments that responded to the Flight 93 crash on 9/11. So it would have been, if I had known earlier and we could have arranged it, it would have been nice to try to meet up with some of those guys and shake their hands and, ask how they dealt with all of that. But uh, I heading to Confluence, I just didn't have the energy in me. I was dead. So I stopped 9 miles in this little, very little town, only 8 people. I believe it's technically a borough out here, called Ohio Pile. It's also a state park. Apparently, it's got really nice whitewater rafting. They do guided tours and stuff. I didn't get a chance to partake. Once I got into town, I just chilled. The assistant chief from Uniontown had reached out to the chief of fire at Ohio Pile, who also owned a pizza restaurant, and um, they gave me a spot to camp for the night. Gave me a free barbecue pulled pork pizza, and took care of me. They're actually also shipping my solar panel that I left there when I left, uh, shipping it to Bedford, where I'll be tomorrow, so I can have my solar panel back. Um, Fairly uneventful day. Like I said, I got into town, just chilled, ate, relaxed, tried to rest my legs because I knew since I cut 11 miles off this walk that my next day, Sunday, was going to be a 28-mile walk to get everything kind of caught back up to my schedule. So I reached out on the Facebook page, and huge shout out to Chelsea, her brother, and her boyfriend who came in early Sunday morning, like right at 7 o'clock. They picked up the cart and transported it to Rockwood, Pennsylvania, to a little hostel there. And then they got to the hostel and they paid for my room there, which was awesome of them. Um, which allowed me to wake up Sunday morning, just throw my day pack on. I loaded it up with waters. Um, and headed towards Rockwood on the Great Allegheny Passage, which is a bike trail. And, through the entire 28 miles, I gained 1,800 feet of elevation, but you can't really tell because it's such a subtle grade. That kind of grade doesn't bother me. I maintained a fairly good pace throughout the day. But halfway through the day, when I got to Confluence, where I should have been already, I stopped and had lunch at the Lucky Dog Cafe, and there was a dog outside, which was awesome because dogs are awesome. I petted him for a little bit, and yeah, I'd stopped for about 45 minutes, had a pulled pork sandwich, um, two or three Gatorades, refilled the Gatorade bottles with water. So I had about 6 or 7 bottles of water for this last like 17, 18-mile hike to get to Rockwood. And again, it was flat. There were some really awesome river views of the Yalgahaney River, and then eventually the Castleman River. They switch depend when you keep following the path, and yeah, it was just it's just a long flat walk, and this was also part of the walk where like I don't know, I don't want to say like epiphany, but like I started thinking about things, and I'd also listened to a book that a couple of friends had recommended me, The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. Ooh, I did a pretty good job pronouncing his last name there. Um, but essentially, the book deals with uh, personal legend and essentially people going after their dreams. And, um, and we hear it, we hear the general idea kind of relayed nowadays is like be the hero of your own story, right? You know, um, in a sense, don't let you dictate what's going to go on in your life. Like take charge, be proactive type things. And one of the great lines in the book is um, and it's repeated over and over, so you know that they're trying to drive it home. But it goes along the lines of, you know, when a person decides to pursue their personal legend, the universe conspires to help them. And I think about that as I've been on this last like 100 miles or so stretch from Morgantown to now. And really, even before that, I mean, since I've been back on the walk, it's been, there's been large amounts of help as I go. Um, just this last 100-mile stretch has been great as far as like, you know, people offering to pay for meals, uh, people stopping by and talking with me because they saw me on Facebook, places offering, the fire department's offering a place to stay, place to shower. Chuck, the guy I met who's reaching out to other departments that we may not be able to reach to try to help out for accommodations. It's wild, man. Like, and even before I read this book, like I had kind of developed the mindset of, you know, if you truly go out and try to put good into the world, positive good, um, I think it comes back to you. You know, in some way, it comes back to you, and for me, it has. I almost every day will have a conversation with someone or meet a person who, I brightens the day. It's just, and maybe it's just because I'm super lonely on this walk. I don't know. Um, but it was just a really good read, and it, it's made me start wondering not if these walks, the first walk or this one was my personal legend, but why it became that way. And I started thinking about my dad, and thinking about, like, yeah, obviously I'm single. I don't have any kids or anything. I wouldn't be doing this if I was. I'm the type of person that if I had those responsibilities, children, wife, girlfriend, what have you, that would come first for me. It would come above all else. And you know, my whole life, one of the things that I have struggled with is that I never gave my mom the joy of being a grandmother. And we always, when we're younger, we have an idea for how our life is going to go. And I guess that's part of life, is like just adjusting when things don't go your way, which is about 90% of the time. Nothing ever goes according to plan. But that's one thing I've always maybe subconsciously beat myself up over, is the fact that I never gave my mom a chance to spoil a grandchild the way her dad, my grandpa, spoiled the hell out of me. Um, and I was thinking about this on the walk, and it was like, your personal legend, your legacy. I was, since I obviously don't have any children, and even if, lightning strikes and I finish this walk, or lightning strikes and a UFO lands right next to me and I meet somebody along this walk somehow and we fall madly in love and have a child, like, that kid's never going to know his grandpa because my dad's gone. And, you know, there's a likelihood that they won't know their grandmother for very long, because my mom is in her late 60s too. Not that I'm hoping for anything bad to happen. I've had enough of that already. Uh, it's just, that's just the circle of life, that kind of stuff happens. But I think, like, there would be a potential world out there where I could conceive a child that wouldn't know either one of his grandparents, and that was like, ugh, it 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 weighed me down for a while. And I think about, again, I got to thinking about, legacy, and, like, the my dad's last name, my last name, Hall, most likely ends when I pass away. And this thought went back to when dad passed away, and what kind of made me, for a brief moment, consider stopping the walk, was that, like, when dad passed, he had his kids and his ex-wife, current best friend, by his side when he passed away. When I die, I'm gonna die alone. I don't have kids, and barring it being a massive accident on the walk, my mom won't be there, and you know, my friends have their own lives. I don't really foresee them, especially if it's 15, 20 years down the road. A lot of my friends are gonna have grandkids and stuff, so it's like they're not gonna have time to be by my side. Like, that stuff kind of weighs on you. But then I really think about the walk, and maybe that's turned into my personal legend, and that's turned into my legacy. And to quote Hamilton, one of my favorite musicals, what is a legacy? It's planting seeds to a garden you never get to see. And hopefully, not that I'm planning on passing away anytime soon, but hopefully the walk, the advocacy for mental health, the smiles that I hope I occasionally bring to people's faces, hopefully that can be my legacy, you know? But I finished the 28-mile walk on the trail, and the last seven or so were rough. I could really start feeling it in my feet. I took two or three breaks along they had benches like every few miles where you could always sit down, take a break. Uh, yeah, probably took two or three breaks in the last 7 miles. I was gone. I was done. But I get to I get to the end of the trail into Rockwood, and there's a commemorative plaque along the trail. And I can't remember the gentleman's name, but on the plaque, there's a paragraph about how he only had one child. He had a daughter, and she always called this man Pap. And as soon as I read that paragraph, I burst out into tears. The last half mile or so, not even a half mile, probably a third of a mile, I was like crying because that was the very same nickname that I used with my dad, was Pap. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't need this after 28 miles of walking. But I finish up. There wasn't anything open in the town of Rockwood to eat that night. So I went to the Dollar General, bought myself 4 Lunchables, and Gatorades were on sale for like 5 for $5. So that was dinner. It was 4 Lunchables, and I drank 3 of the 5 Gatorades. I saved the other 2 for the morning. And then yesterday, it was just an easy, like just a shade under 10 mile walk from uh, Rockwood to here in Somerset. I had plans of going 18, 19 miles up to Stoystown, and then taking 30 east towards the Flight 93 Memorial. I just 28 miles had me broke down yesterday. So stopped in town, got a room here at the Days Inn. It was only like $60. Again, I don't need 5-star treatment. I need a bed with no bugs and a clean room to crash in, and I need Wi-Fi so I can shoot these podcasts out. But today we got about 15, 16 miles. I'm gonna do 12 to get to the Flight 93 Memorial. Spend some time there, and then it's 2.5 miles or 2 miles or so on their driveway to get out. It's a long driveway into where the memorial is, and then there's one campground that's fairly close that we've reached out to, haven't heard back from. Hopefully they'll give me permission to camp. If not, I know there's another one a little bit further up the road that if we have to pay for a camp spot, we will. I'd like to think it would be okay just for a night to throw a tent down, but you never know. But yeah, we're gonna keep going, guys. Uh, got a chance of storms like every day this week. It's gonna get a little bit warm today, a little bit warm tomorrow. But yeah, like 50% chance of storms, which if you're me means it's 100% chance that I'm getting rained on. Because yesterday was only a 40% chance, and of course, shower right on top of me. But we got the tarp for the ride, and I got my rain jacket, and we're gonna get it done. So uh, take it easy, you guys. Remember, if you're struggling, reach out. 988 is available for you. They can often send somebody to your house if you're in a crisis. There's a reason you're here, and you may not have found it yet, but I guarantee you, if you keep looking and you keep going forward, you'll get there. So love you guys. We'll see you hopefully in another week with another rousing episode of Haul Across the Country. Take care, guys.